Mijn naam is Floor Oosting, ik ben hoofdredacteur van de non-fictie van de Bezige Bij. En we zijn hier vandaag voor de presentatie van de Nederlandse uitgave van het nieuwe boek van Sylvia Nazar, Grand Pursuit, in het Nederlands vertaald als De Wil tot Welvaart, het verhaal van geniale economen. Dit boek gaat over de ontwikkeling van de economische wetenschap. En die ontwikkeling wordt geschetst aan de hand van biografieën, aan de hand van de levens van de grote economen. Ik noem er een paar: Karl Marx, John Maynard Keynes, Peter Schumpeter, Friedrich von Hayek. Het eindigt met Amartya Sen. De centrale gedachte van het boek is dat de mens niet overgeleverd is, of het grootste deel van de mensheid niet overgeleverd is aan armoede, maar dat de mens zijn lot in eigen handen kan nemen en dat de economie het lot van de mensen kan verbeteren.
In the 20 years between 1840 and 1860, i.e. actually the period in which Marx came to London and was having writer's block, for the first time in human history, the living standards of average people were going up cumulatively. Wasn't a good year followed by a bad year, so that basically living standards would remain at subsistence as they had been for 2,000 years, but that something different seemed to be happening that contradicted the teachings of the early economists who said the nation can become richer, and maybe the top 5% or 10%, but the bottom 90% are doomed. They're never going to really, they can never pull themselves out of the mud, okay? There was no connection, in other words, between all this incredible, dramatic progress technologically, culturally, in terms of travel, in terms of communication, and the way that 9 out of 10 people lived, okay? And that seemed to be changing because wages, the average wage was going up and it wasn't falling back down. So the question was, has the world changed? Has it suddenly become more malleable, or is this just an accident?
And the answer?
Well, we know what the answer of the conservatives and of Marx was: it's just an accident, just wait. The next crisis, it'll all come crashing down. And there were his conservative counterparts who were saying that bring back slavery, bring back, the Middle Ages. We're saying the same thing. But Alfred Marshall, Henry Mayhew, Charles Dickens were saying, nope, the world is working in a different way. Before Alfred Marshall, economics was about what you couldn't do. It was about, a very bleak reality, and to which you could adjust yourself, okay? And that was the best you were going to do. After Marshall, economics became the cheerful science, okay? It was about what you could do. And people were drawn to economics because they saw it as a tool, an instrument, and they saw the development of economics as a search for instruments of mastery. In other words, a way to change things as opposed to merely adapting to this harsh reality. What makes living standards go up? It means that for us to consume more, like our children will probably have, in 100 years, they will be consuming 4 to 8 times as much as we do. Maybe services, we hope, not necessarily natural resources. What makes that possible? You can only consume more if you produce more, okay? Now, Marx and the early economists saw that there was an incredible explosion of technological change and increased efficiency, okay? What they didn't see was that the same competition that forced the owners of business firms and the managers of business firms to constantly look to do more with the same resources, i.e., to make more with what they had. Also, that same competition also resulted in the gains from being able to do more with the same resources being spread around. In other words, it was not true, and it couldn't be true, that the owners, or the owners and the managers, could, capture all of the income. And it happens to be a statistical, empirical fact that one of the most stable economic relationships is between the share of national income that goes to labor, okay, has been almost constant. And what does that say? That says that income goes up, it's shared around. A lot of the debate then, as well as in the intervening years, has not been about is it theoretically good to run deficits in, when, a big chunk of your workforce is unemployed, but is about the efficacy, the practicalities of fiscal policy, because in the U.S., for example, the stimulus package was like a Christmas tree, okay? Every congressman who wanted a special deal for some industry or some group of consumers got it. So the stimulus was horribly designed. It took forever because it has to go through the political process. And that is why a lot of people have very legitimate reservations about what they call Keynesianism. However, that is very different from saying, we don't, you have the flu, it's not cancer, so shut up and just, get better. Because Keynes and Fisher both understood from the aftermath of World War I that high unemployment and high inflation are very dangerous to democracies and free markets. Why? Because when people are suffering, and especially when they're scared, they tend to drink a lot of Kool-Aid. They tend to embrace a lot of solutions that are worse than the disease. So he and Fisher were, did not subscribe to the notion that, well, things will mend themselves in time, which they probably would. Confidence is, which maybe in English has a slightly different meaning than trust or vertrouwen. Look, we face, there are a lot of problems now, right? First of all, we're in a recession, okay? And even if we can distinguish the long term from the short term, that's a problem. But we have some long-term problems too, right? Like, we need to think about sustainable development. And, I guess I think, this 10 years of struggling with this, I think that this engine of analysis, this apparatus of the mind, is more important than ever, because otherwise all we have is fear, all we have is emotion or some ideology. And what we really need is a way to break these big problems down and think about them systematically so that we can tackle them one step at a time.
Confidence.
Confidence.
Ja.